I was inspired to create the video today for anyone who's in a tough situation financially. Maybe your credit isn't where you wish it was. I wanted to make this video and to go live to talk about how it's okay because currently I'm in that position where it's like I wish my credit was better, and it it gets really easy to fall into these traps and these cycles of just feeling bad for yourself and throwing yourself these pity parties of, oh, well, I wish I could apply for this credit card, but my credit isn't good enough. I wish I didn't get in credit card debt. I wish I didn't, fall into this trap of materialism. And I wish I didn't get in over my head buying things that I shouldn't have been buying. And when your credit isn't where you want it to be, it just gets so easy to continually put so much energy into feeling sorry for yourself that you look past the fact that your credit is bad right now or your financial situation is a little shaky right now, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be like that forever. And so we need to understand that even though things might look tough in the moment, in the present moment, it doesn't mean that things are going to end up like that. That things are just over for us because of where we are currently. And so, what I wanted to do was, I wanted to go over Jeremiah chapter 32. And Jeremiah chapter 32 is a really neat chapter in the Bible because during this time in ancient times, this was when um, Israel was about to be essentially taken over by Babylonia. And essentially, during this time, Jeremiah gets a vision from God to buy land, essentially. And this is weird because everybody kind of knows that Israel's going to get taken over. And so buying land, it seems like it would make no sense. Like it's one of those things where even Jeremiah was confused because he's like, okay, well, if this land is going to get taken over and I'm buying it, it's essentially useless, isn't it? Because this is almost like the equivalent of if someone is trying to sell you a house, but the house burns down and they're still trying to charge you 500K or whatever for it. And you're like, okay, well, there's no house here now. So how am I paying 500K for what used to be, but what is no longer there? It's almost like paying someone $500 for a box of like empty Yeezys or something. It's like, well, the Yeezys may have been there at some point in time, but the thing is, currently they're not there. And so it leads to just kind of having that feeling of, okay, well, what's the point in doing this thing when the current moment things are looking like this? And so, but of course, God, when God tells us to do something, He's not always thinking about the present moment. He's thinking about the future. And so that's why, even though we might beat ourselves up because of where our credit is right now, that doesn't mean that our credit is going to be like that forever. Just because we're stressed and we're struggling to pay the rent right now doesn't mean that it's going to be like that forever. And so that's why I wanted to do this deep dive into Jeremiah chapter 32. And so to read this for you guys, it says, this is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord in the 10th year of Zedekiah, king of Judah, which was the 18th year of Nebuchadnezzar. The army of the king of Babylon was then besieging Jerusalem, and Jeremiah the prophet was confined in the courtyard of the guard in the royal place of Judah, or royal palace of Judah. Now Zedekiah, king of Judah, had imprisoned him there, saying, why do you prophesy as you do? You say, this is what the Lord says. I am about to give this city into the hands of the king of Babylon, and he will capture it. Zedekiah, king of Judah, will not escape the Babylonians, but will certainly be given into the hands of the king of Babylon, and will speak with him face to face, and see him with his own eyes. He will take Zedekiah to Babylon, where he will remain until I deal with him, declares the Lord. If you fight against the Babylonians, you will not succeed. Jeremiah said, the word of the Lord came to me. Hanamel, son of Shallum, your uncle, is going to come to you and say, buy my field at Anathoth, because as nearest relative, it is your right and duty to buy it. Then, just as the Lord had said, my cousin Hanamel came to me in the courtyard of the guard and said, buy my field in Anathoth in the territory of Benjamin. Since it is your right to redeem it and possess it, buy it for yourself. I knew that this was the word of the Lord. So I bought the field at Anathoth from my cousin Hanamel and weighed out for him 17 shekels of silver. I signed and sealed the deed, had it witnessed, and weighed out the silver on the scales. I took the deed of the purchase, the sealed copy containing the terms and conditions, as well as the unsealed copy, and I gave this deed to Baruch, son of Neriah, and the son of Maaseiah, in the presence of my cousin Hanamel, and of the witnesses who had signed the deed, and of all the Jews sitting in the courtyard of the guard. In their presence I gave Baruch these instructions. This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Take these documents, both the sealed and unsealed copies of the deed of purchase, and put them in a clay jar so they will last a long time. For this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Houses, fields, and vineyards will again be bought in this land. So this was really neat because just even reading this, it talks about how Jeremiah is saying he kind of got this word from God. And he talks about how even he was kind of confused by it, because you think if one thing is going a certain way and it seems like God is telling you to do something that completely contradicts the current moment that you're in, it would be confusing for anybody. And it's easy for us to just say, oh, well, it was God, but in the current moment, it didn't make any sense. And so, and then in Jeremiah chapter 32, verse 27, it says, I am the Lord, the God of all mankind. Is anything too hard for me? And this, after I read it, it became one of my favorite verses because it really put into perspective how we tend to almost question God because of our current situations. We tend to think, oh, well, this is where I'm at right now. And what do you mean you're telling me to do this thing and then things are going to get better all of a sudden or in the future? And it reminds me of creating content, because when you first start creating content or when you first start making music, you might not see your channel or your views or your listens go up like crazy in the first few months. It might be really stagnant. But then ultimately it's up to us to continue to persist and to continue to trust God while we're doing these things in order to see the results come. And what ultimately ended up happening with this land was, of course, Jeremiah did buy the land. It was taken over by the Babylonians, and so essentially they were exiled for like 70 years, I believe. But then once they came back, the land was fine and people were able to buy land again and everything, just like the Lord had said. So ultimately, Jeremiah buying the land, it wasn't so much about, oh, this is going to improve the situation currently right now. It was more so about, this is the play for the long term. This is a play that might not make sense now, but down the road it will. And it's crazy to me to think that they were exiled for 70 years, because this is why I was talking about the whole content creation thing. Because you think about how if you're exiled for 70 years, or if it takes a plan, let's say you start a channel and it takes you 5 years to actually make anything from it, by then you're getting frustrated. By then you're starting to feel uneasy. By then you're starting to question things. And in the process of that, we tend to get so caught up in, oh, it's been 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. In Jeremiah's case, it was 70 years of him just having to trust that, okay, well, God told me to buy this land, and I guess that's what I'm going to do because, this is what I was instructed to do. And him having that faith, that's what was ultimately rewarded. And so when you start that podcast, when you start that YouTube channel, when you're going through things, it's important to always trust God because the situation might not get better tomorrow. It might not get better next month or next year. But as long as we continue to have faith and we continue to do what we're called to do, things will get better. And that's ultimately what we have to trust. And that's what has helped me because I had to realize that sitting here and stressing about my current situation isn't going to change anything. If I sit here and stress myself out into oblivion, nothing is going to change. And so instead of stressing, if you channel that energy into actually improving your current situation, if you channel that energy and say, okay, yes, things are tough right now, but I'm going to continue to trust, I'm going to continue to have faith, I'm going to continue to go to God because I understand that ultimately God knows what's best for me. If we operate from that state of mind, if we operate from that mentality, not only do we not get as stressed or feel as anxious, but we become filled with this sense of hope. We have a different kind of energy to us when we're working on ourselves, when we're just going through our day to day lives. And so that's why, even with some of these, whether it's like an athlete or whatever, you hear their stories and they talk about how they might not have had the most money growing up. They might have grown up in, bad areas or whatever, but they didn't allow that to deter them from working hard and working towards a dream, essentially. Because a lot of these guys that are in the NBA or in the NFL or playing D1 football, when they first started these things, when they first started playing, football or basketball or soccer when they were kids, they might not have necessarily seen the fact that, oh, well, I'm going to be in the NBA making X amount of money. All they knew was, okay, well, I'm good at playing this sport or I'm okay at this sport and it's fun and I can do it with my friends and it's an escape from the current situation. But the beautiful thing about that is because they were focused on doing what they could to get to the next level, they weren't so focused on their current situation and, oh, well, woe is me because I don't have this like my friend does, or I don't have the nicest shoes like my friend does. When you focus on where you're trying to go, you would be surprised on how much easier it is to get there because you have to have this analogy of almost like you almost have to think about it from the standpoint of if you're trying to get from point A to point B, right? And you're sitting here and you know that, okay, it's going to be 20 minutes away. If you stop and make pit stops at, this grocery store and that grocery store, it's going to take you much longer than if you just go straight there. And with our goals, it's the same exact thing. And stress oftentimes is like a detour on our path to our goal. Because when you concern yourself with all the outside noise and this is going on and that's going on, ultimately it deters you from reaching your goal. So if your goal, for example, is to get into dental school or med school, if you focus on everybody that's telling you about how hard dental school is or how hard med school is or how competitive it is to get in, then of course you're not going to end up doing anything because now you've been so paralyzed by fear, you've taken so many detours that sometimes you can take a detour that's so far off your original path that you never find your way back. And the same thing can be said about getting in debt or having a low credit score. If you focus so hard on having the low credit score that you don't focus enough on what you can do to get out of that situation, then of course you're going to stay in the current situation that you're at. And that's why whenever I started to catch myself throwing myself a pity party, I had to catch myself and take myself out of that way of thinking because I had to understand that me throwing myself a pity party isn't going to get me where I need to be. Me throwing myself a pity party is only going to hold me back more in the future. Me throwing myself a pity party is only going to be a huge detour off of where I'm supposed to go. And because I had to realize that, now all of a sudden I'm saying, okay, well, I had to realize that God gives us different struggles to see what we're made of, to see what we're capable of. And honestly, God gives us battles so that we can grow from them, and also so that our faith in Him can grow through the problems that we're going through. And it's, for example, like with me and like my credit card debt, or student loans, or low credit score. For me, what I had to learn was I had to go, okay, because my credit score isn't where I want it to be. I think what God is trying to tell me is that I need to be a better steward of my money. I need to be better at controlling, and seeing like where my money is going. I can't fall into this trap of materialism and consumerism, because otherwise, if I keep falling into this trap, not only am I making material things an idol, but I'm getting to a point where I'm spending money that I don't have on these things because I've convinced myself that I need them, or that my life will not be okay unless I have these things. And that's the danger of falling into that trap of materialism, is that we convince ourselves that these things are so important. And I know one thing I used to do when I was super into, materialism and consuming, I convinced myself that, oh my goodness, like I need this, because if some new shoes came out or something from Lulu came out, I could already start to envision myself in that. And in the process of envisioning myself in that, I was already starting to tell myself that I needed that. Because if I saw a dope pair of sneakers at the store, I would tell myself, ooh, well, I could wear this with it. I could wear it in this specific instance. I could wear it for this. And because I started doing that and I started thinking just like that, it really started to make me put these things on a pedestal. So then it hit a point where I started to see myself, I started to see my value as a result of my sneakers, as a result of my fashion, as a result of the things that I was wearing, as opposed to who I am as a person. And because of that, I ended up getting into credit card debt to try to live up to this version of myself that I had built for myself. And because I end up getting into credit card debt and all of these things, initially I did fall into that trap of like, dang, I shouldn't have bought those shoes, I shouldn't have bought that clothes. And what I would end up doing as a result is I would end up in this constant cycle of like buying shoes and then trying to like sell them or whatever, or buying things and trying to sell them. And but then it feeded into this like this loop of, okay, now like I sold a couple pairs of shoes, I guess now I can get a couple pairs of shoes that I actually want. And so in the long term, or in the short term, I thought I was doing something good, because I was like, oh well, I have these shoes that I haven't worn in a month or two or whatever. But instead of asking myself, hold on, why did I buy these shoes in the first place if I'm not wearing them much, or if I didn't intend to wear them much? Instead of asking myself that question, I just figured, oh, well, I need to get rid of these shoes. I guess I can replace them with something else. And so I started to replace shoes. But in the meantime, what I'm doing is I'm really just spending more money, because if I bought a pair of shoes for $100 and sold them for $40, I still lost $60. Now, if I go to buy another pair of shoes worth $100 or 120, whatever, I'm actually spending more money in the long term. And so when you continue to just rinse and repeat, it's very easy to understand how a person could get into serious credit card debt from this. And because I had realized that, this is why I think I had to have a low credit score. I had to go through this phase of feeling sorry for myself. It was ultimately God's way of trying to show me that I need to be a better steward of my money. I need to be good with tithing. I need to be consistent with that. I need to stop falling into this trap of thinking, woe is me, just because things aren't going the way that I want to. And when I become a better steward of my money, it'll allow me to be much better in the long term. And so that way, when I'm blessed with more money, when I'm blessed with more, I'll be in a better position to steward that much better. And this is why when I was in like high school or when I was in college, I believe I was like experimenting with drop shipping. I was experimenting, like I had an Etsy, like print on demand store. I was looking into all these things because I wanted to make money. And I was looking into things that I thought were going to make me money quickly. But what that ended up doing was it made me almost like more money hungry and focused. And instead of trying to find something and stick to it, I would start something for like a couple months or whatever and then switch. I would try to open a Shopify drop shipping store, try to kind of start it on and off, for like 2 months and then boom, quit, try to find something else. And then I would go on Etsy and I would constantly try to find what was trending because all I cared about was trying to make money. But what I realized from that was it was a blessing that I never made a lot of money while I was doing that because all I would have done if I actually would have made good money in that period is I would have just squandered it. I would have gotten to that point where I would have just looked up after a while and been like, "Oh my goodness, like what did I do? What did I spend all that money on?" And that's never a good place to be because I would have made whatever money and then I probably should have spent it on shoes if I'm being honest. If my Etsy store or drop shipping would have taken off when it did, I wouldn't have had the maturity or the understanding to really be a good steward of that money. And then I would have ended up looking up just feeling super disappointed that I really just spent all of that money. And so, yeah, you guys, I really did want to make this video to talk about the importance of continuing to believe, continuing to have faith, even though your credit isn't where you want it to be. Because as someone who's there right now, just because a number isn't where you wish it was, doesn't mean that it's always going to be like that. And when you put that energy, when you channel that energy into growing your faith with God, growing in your walk with God, when you focus that energy on the things you can control. So maybe if you're unemployed, maybe that means you can channel that energy into going harder, into applying for more jobs, into being more intentional with how you're spending your time. If your credit score isn't where you want it to be and you're like, okay, and you have issues watching Netflix all day, every day, or you have issues doing things that you shouldn't be doing that are ultimately just distractions. Maybe that means you're just hanging with your friends a little too much. And sometimes that means you have to let them know, like, yo, you guys, I appreciate you guys. I want to spend time with you guys, but I need to grind right now because with where I am right now, I need to focus on making moves that are going to help in the long run. If that means you need to spend a little bit more time on LinkedIn, reaching out to different recruiters, trying to get a job, or if you have a job right now, but you feel like you deserve more, instead of complaining about your credit score and your job and how you feel like you are deserving of more, channel that energy into actually doing something that can make you more money. Because when you get so preoccupied with, oh, this job sucks and I'm not making money and I wish I was making more, or and this is the reason my credit is where it is because I can't pay my rent on time, I can't pay for my car or phone bill. When we spend so much time preoccupied with ultimately things that we can control, but we don't control them because we're so focused on hating the current situation that we're in. I always tell people we can either put energy into things that we can't change, or we can focus on putting our energy into changing the things that we can and to changing the things that we actually have control over. And so when we shift our perspective, when we shift our mindset from going, woe, it's me, to thank God it's me, because now, yes, this has happened with my credit, but what's going to come from this is now I might get a job that's paying me more. I might get a job that's just a better opportunity. It's more aligned with where I'm trying to get to in the future. And ultimately, once these things happen, then we're going to be grateful that we went through the struggle that we're going through. And so, what I would tell you guys, even though it gets really hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, know that the light is there. And just because you're a little further out than you would like to be, don't think that just because you're a little further away that the light all of a sudden is gone. The tunnel might just be a little bit longer for you, but that doesn't mean that the light has disappeared on you. That means the light is still there. And what you can do, what you can control, is the fact that you keep walking. Keep walking through that tunnel because Jesus is with you. And it's easy for us to stop sometimes. It's easy for us to fall and just kind of stay there. But in this life, it's a marathon. And when we keep going, when we keep trusting, when we keep focusing on that forward progress, that's where we make change. That's where we get to the point of making legit progress, where we can look back and be proud of ourselves. Because oftentimes, when you're in the fight, sometimes it feels like you're losing. Sometimes it feels like you're going to end up losing. But if you just hang in there, if you keep going, if you keep fighting, then you're going to win. You're going to come out strong. Because there were times I was in dental school, I didn't think I was going to make it. There were times exams were difficult, all these things were happening. I didn't know if I'd make it to graduation because I was like, I don't know, these exams are so difficult. I don't know if I even want to graduate. But before I knew it, it was like I just kept persisting. I just kept showing up. And I remember a faculty told me that one day. He said, dental school is going to be extremely difficult. But if you can get yourself to keep showing up, to keep trying to become the best version of yourself, then eventually you're going to make it to graduation. You're going to look up and graduation is going to be right around the corner. And so because he said that, that's all I remember is just keep showing up no matter what. And before I knew it, graduation day came and your boy made it. So to anybody out there that's dealing with tough financial times, their credit score isn't where they want it to be, all I would say is to keep going, to keep trusting God, because God knows what's best for you. Keep working hard, keep having faith, and before you know it, things will start looking up. So if you guys stayed with me for this entire video, I really appreciate you guys. Please drop a comment or like in the in the comments below or whatever. But if you guys like this content, please subscribe for more. And I'll talk to all of you guys in the next one.